impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep.
Oh, damn hacker, that second time tonight that asshole's got in.
Thing's giving me a headache.
Yeah, tell me about it. It took the hackers months to figure out how to do this.
The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
Welcome to another Boer Republic podcast. Tonight we've got a very interesting guest joining us, another fellow South African, and he's made a few waves at least, and a bit of a name for himself, especially a few satirical videos. We're lucky to have the one and only Klipkop on the show this evening. Thank you for joining us, Klipkop.
Thank you for that awesome introduction, and I'm glad to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Just to give the audience an idea of where you're coming from and what your stance is on things, we just basically want to look at why you've chosen the path that you've done. You've got a very interesting YouTube channel, a lot of funny videos going on, good content, and I hope there's more of it to come in the future. What has been your journey so far? Because it seems from, if one watches your videos, there is obviously a clear progression. So what has your journey been like, and why are you doing what you're doing now?
Well, to tell you about my journey, I will have to tell you about what happened before I started making videos. I was seeing a lot of misinformation, especially being spread on Facebook with regards to specifically farm murders. You would see posts with photos, and you would do a Google search on the photo, and you would see that, no, but this crime was committed in America, and stats being skewed. And I went on a mission to go fact check all of those fake news. And then on my friend's post, I would reply with the hyperlinks proving that this is fake news. You should stop doing this. Well, after like 2 or 3 months, I had almost no more friends left. So after 2 or 3 months, I had almost no more friends left. But I still felt like I had to fight the scourge of the crazy rights. So I decided to make a few satirical videos just to take a stab at them. But during this journey, when I became more politically aware, and I started to notice that the people on the right actually have a point. There is just these few people that is poisoning the well at the moment. And eventually, when all the prophets of doom were calling, yes, they're coming to take our land. They are coming to take our land. And I dismissed those claims as well. But in February in Parliament, the way I heard the MPs speak about us, specifically the Afrikaner nation, was gruesome. Like it was really a wake-up call, what they think of us. So that's where I decided I'm going to swing right, and this scourge needs to be fought.
Well, yeah, thank you, and well done. I mean, for following, as you would say, following the truth and following where the evidence leads you. It always takes a lot of courage to do that. How would you sum up sort of your stance now towards the news? Because, you know, there's a lot of misinformation both on the left and the right. Just how do you generally, as you approach the news, I mean, there's so many news sources and there's the mainstream media, and obviously we've got a lot more alternative media coming through these days, and a lot of people doing a lot of documentaries. What is your approach these days to the news? How do you dissect what is true from fake?
You have to be very careful, and Google is your friend. Like, if you hear something and it seems plausible but not quite right, go and Google it. Make sure you have the correct information. Go and listen to other opinions. I feel especially now that Donald Trump came into the presidency, he made the world more aware that you are being lied to. Go and look these things up for yourself. And if you do, you find that a lot of it is truth. A lot of it is bullshit.
And with your journey from, should we say, from the left to the right, how would you generally describe the reception that you've gotten from people on the right as you have progressively come into more contact with, you would say, people on the right?
the thing about the right, like I'm sure 95% of the people on the right at the moment were on the left at some stage. So it is pretty welcoming. It's okay to pull your head out of your ass. It's okay to wake up. You don't have to be ashamed of that. You have to be ashamed of still living under a rock.
To get to that point again regarding changing and realizing that it's okay to change your opinions, what has, just by changing your opinions and by taking a stance, should one say, has there been much of a challenge when dealing with people once you've decided to take a stance?
The first problem was in my own friend circle was, but weren't you liberal just a few days ago? You spoke out against this and now you are for it, but you just have to man up and take the punch.
The way you handle your content now, one example, for instance, that we found quite entertaining was in your commentary regarding the left, what would be the left-leaning stance on land expropriation. It was basically a really good satirical take on the violence that is often associated with left-leaning ideals, how tolerance is preached, but they act in a very intolerant way. What's been the reaction to some of those videos that you've been doing? What's the reaction been like?
Everybody seems to be really enjoying the satirical side. The problem is, to be honest, I feel a little bit guilty because this is a real problem and people really lost their livelihoods there. It's probably not right to poke fun at people in that way, but if you can at least try to make your content a little bit more entertaining, you might be able to reach a wider audience. It is in that way that I would like to attract more people.
And I think the question is, for us, it's sort of just to get a kind of a foundation of what your view is, especially on the land expropriation problem, as it is basically one of the biggest problems we have in South Africa today, and especially one that creates a large challenge for Afrikaners. What is your stance generally on what the government is doing? Obviously, we're asking you now to put your tinfoil hat on, and none of us know that we can predict the future. But what is sort of, if you had to predict, if you had a farm and you were on the list that was just drafted out, what is your response? What is your stance on the situation at the moment with regards to expropriation of farms?
Well, if you would like me to predict the future, what I think is going to happen now is the ANC will do this test run, and I don't believe all the farms will be expropriated that's on that list, but I do believe that most of them, or let's say a lot of them, will be on that list. But from the selection, you can see that it is land that is in trust that are being held for speculative purposes. For example, now people invested in that land for speculative purposes, because one day when somebody wants it there, they can ask a premium. But the problem is the state doesn't want to pay that premium. And that is why they are taking this path now. But I don't think it will end just there. Once this test case is done, they will slowly start picking away. First they are going to go to farmers that has unused land, and they are going to say, okay, we are going to expropriate this piece, but you can continue farming on your piece. And they are slowly going to choke us. The other problem I see coming is that with all these expropriation talks, the same that we had in Zimbabwe, things like farm murders and farm attacks are going to increase. And I don't know, the guys must either arm themselves up or come seek refuge in the cities.
I think that's a very succinct way to summarize generally how we all see the future panning out. And it sadly is, there's a lot of speculation going about how this is how China is going to take over Africa, how they are basically recolonializing Africa. And the question is, how much of this, because that's kind of what the mainstream media pushes, that this is a way to get votes, and that we should all just calm down and we should wait for next year when it's the election. After that, everything will go back to normal. And that is kind of what I, as I speak to people around me on the ground, and that is kind of the rhetoric that I get back, is that it is just a way of seeking votes. Just calm down. After that, everything will go back to normal and we can start working on our economy. What is your views on that idea that maybe this is just a bit of political games, and hopefully everyone will, come back to rationality after that, and we can continue building the economy?
Now that they are garnering for votes with this whole expropriation thing is a fact. But the thing is, they promised the people a lot of things. And like Julius Malema said in that one interview he did, there will be an unled revolution. Like they made the people bloodthirsty. They made the people hungry. I think we are past the point of no return. They will have no other option than to like push ahead hard with this issue. Protests are like in the newspapers and in the social media, you see like protest is a normal thing. They burn cars, they stone cars, set buildings alight. You know, it's a normal day-to-day thing. We are desensitized to it already. And that will only escalate if those people that were promised land don't get land.
The rhetoric is very interesting. This ties into very much what you said, what Julius Malema's statement. It's very easy to say things to whip up your people and get them all riled up and ready for revolution, and then, you know, just say, oh, but it's just the way we talk, or it's just the way we speak to our supporters and that. But what those in power do realize, and what those in power do know, is that their followers will act. Whether or not there is any validity to what they say, their followers have started acting in huge numbers so far. We've seen it all over the country. And like you say, yes, there are riots, there are buildings and buses and trains, and the ANC and the EFF supporters usually just burn down anything they can when they're angry. What we have definitely seen is an increase in random people pitching up and staking land or making land claims on farmers' properties. Now, whether or not that will escalate severely in the future, we have yet to see. But I think also the rulers definitely know that, you know, they don't actually have to do much. They just need to tender rally, excite their supporters, and the supporters will do the rest. Then it's almost like then they don't have to admit too much guilt in the process because they weren't the ones who did it. That's the way I see that the inner workings of those in power go. The other thing that also was quite interesting was the desensitization aspect. Maybe you can comment a bit more on this. Many foreigners don't really realize, you know, they hear South Africans speak and it's like, oh, but you know, you sound so desensitized, or you sound so basically as if it doesn't faze you, or, you know, why don't you react? Why aren't you angry? Maybe you can comment a bit more on the aspect that we're so used to it that it's either a matter of, oh, you know, people are in general just like, oh yeah, it's, you know, it's a terrible situation, but whatever, you know, I'm going to go on with my life. Or we just so bombarded with it that what ends up happening is that we completely block it off. I think both of those attitudes are valid, but where do you stand with desensitization?
Well, maybe to add sensitization, people in general aren't allowed to be angry about anything because we are the oppressors and we did all the bad things in history and nobody else did anything bad, and we owe everybody something. So if you start to get angry, all they have to do is say apartheid, end of conversation, or crime against humanity, and there you are silenced. So it's almost like you are not allowed to speak out. If you speak out, you get tossed into jail like Vicky Momberg, or get 100,000 Rand fine like Penny Sparrow. You are scared to speak out.
That's true. It's very valid. I mean, the race card gets used, and it is a very effective tool, especially when you've got people made example of. Two examples that you mentioned there, especially are the South African real estate market is under threat because most of the real estate agents are constantly targeted for racial hatred, and by that I'm referring to Penny Sparrow and Vicky Momberg. I'm not sure if that demographic is specifically racist or very race realist, but I'm sure that the effects of that sort of work is definitely taxing on your patience and the way you deal with people. The other aspect there is important, is the way that words and the way we want others to perceive us can easily affect our thoughts. Another example maybe that ties into that is the Black Monday protests. What was interesting about that is people were finally angry enough and upset enough to do something. Then it's almost as if it fell flat. What do you think about the Black Monday protests and the reasons for it not gathering attention again?
Well, the first reason the Black Monday protest fell flat was, but the social media and the media was hungry for this. They were looking for any reason to lambast this protest. We even had Fikile Mbalula, who was Minister of Police at the time. He retweeted a photo from, I think it was 2009, where there were 3 white guys burning the new flag. But if you go look in context, that photo, the white guys were protesting a baby that died because of bad government healthcare. So the thing is, it's almost like you can't win. But I think it's time for us to stand up and say, listen here, this is just a flag. And the stem it's not a song for racial hatred like kill the Boer or shoot the Boer. But the media used those 2 instances of the flag and that one instance where they sang the stem, which totally derailed the whole movement. And now you don't know which way to go, because you must either deconstruct this myth that the old flag is apartheid or the stem is apartheid. And I think that is pretty much impossible. The only way we can go forward is to deconstruct these myths.
Yeah, I like the thing you said previously, where you said we are past the point of no return. And, obviously, as you talk now about deconstructing the myth, the question I always have is, how much space is there, or how much time do we still have where it is still basically a battle of words, where this problem that we have, while there's racial tension and the situation in the country can still be turned around with arguments. I feel that, and I mean, tell me also what you feel, and that kind of brings us to the point where we have to decide whether what we're doing now is we're trying to obviously, in a way, share our ideas, trying to convince people, in a way that whites aren't responsible, especially present-day whites aren't responsible for what happened 50, 60 years ago in apartheid. And in a way, we should work towards giving people individual responsibility. And, that is a problem we have, is that we are still trying to keep it an argument where we're trying to convince people of ideas and hopefully turn the ship around. But as you say, that feeling, and I generally have the same feeling, is that aren't we just in a way wasting our time having discussions, and even on Twitter, which is basically just even trying to push their ideas and trying to get people on their side. But as you say, even though as a white Afrikaner is against these things, I mean, at the moment you can only really stand with your words. The question is, are we basically wasting our time standing and trying to fight this with words, and should we think of a more extreme way of handling it?
You say this is a fight of words, and I don't fully agree with that. The guys on the farms that are getting killed, there are people running around on our streets setting things alight. So these protests were used during the apartheid era as well. And it slowly escalated until the government had no option to give in. And it's exactly what we're seeing at the moment. It's slowly escalating. But in my opinion, this is a war. It started in the 1960s. They wanted to push out the government, the colonizers, and slowly they are taking over, and we are the last domino. And I think there is a big constituency that will have it no other way. They will die trying. All of the whites must be out of Africa, because Africa is for blacks, finish and klaar. Taking up arms, especially if you are doing it on YouTube, But we have to resist somehow. I don't know. Maybe if we can really try to push governments. I know just after 94, the farmers on the border were allowed to carry automatic weapons. Firstly, for protection, and secondly, they also could arrest people for border jumping, which is also a problem at the moment of immigrants coming over. And you saw what happened in the townships with the Somalian guys. But
sure, yeah.
We need to arm our farmers. Otherwise, the farmers need to come to the city. We are past that point of no return.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, you sum it up very well, and that definitely is our underlying feeling. And obviously, one of the reasons we started this is, sadly, we do feel we are beyond that point as well. And hence, that's the same discussion we had with people when we were in Irania a few months ago. And, it is almost as we've recognized this point of no return way too late. And if you have that conversation with people in Irania, you ask them that question, like, when did they come to that realization? When you wake up one morning and you just realize that you are in a war, and even though you're not responsible for the things people accuse you for, your race is under threat in this country. And the thing that they said is, basically the day that they realized that they are going to be the minority demographic in an area, they decided to start their own town, and with the idea of starting their own country where they are demographically the majority, because that is the only way you could really control your own future.
So you feel the start of the Boer Republic, the start of our new future, our new Genesis, will be around Urania?
Sure. I mean, that is the purpose of this podcast, is a way to discuss these ideas and to find as many possible solutions, many possible ideas. We do support Urania and what they do. I think that it is definitely up for debate whether that's the only solution or whether that is their solution. But me personally, I really support what they do, and I think that is definitely one aspect that has to be explored, where, again, you would probably say that the area that they are in is not ideal. You want to be close to a harbor when you're thinking strategic-wise. And, in the end, if you are right, and most of the whites are driven out of the country, what are you going to be? You're going to be against more than 50 million Africans. I don't see how you're going to be able to fight back against that. But yeah, definitely the Urania model is one that we do support.
I don't think that one solution will fix all, though.
Sure, agreed.
All of the people in the Western Cape, they don't want to go live in the desert. At the moment, the black demographic in the Western Cape is skyrocketing. I saw census data from 2011 that said there was about 11% African blacks in the Western Cape, and it's now almost 50%, and that is in the last 7 years. So if we really want to take a stand, we need to do so now. If we are going to wait 3 or 4 more years, it's going to be too late. Which is all. That brings me to the topic that we discussed earlier about taking hands with other communities. This is a time we need to make more friends. We don't need more enemies. And I haven't seen AfriForum reach out an olive branch to the colored community in the Cape yet. But I think it is coming, though. If I analyze AfriForum correctly, what their plan is, they want to collect membership fees. And with those membership fees, they start doing municipal services there where government is slacking. And if I can predict the future, those municipal services from government side is only going to get worse and worse and less during time. So as AfriForum takes over more of these responsibilities, there will come a certain stage where they can just go to the UN and they can say, listen here, we are already running our own government here. We are paying all our things. All we are doing is we're paying tax to the state, and we are already running our own country. This is our borders. We have to cede it.
As an example, and recently we traveled through central South Africa, that area of the country, and we spoke to a few people. And one of the big problems there was service delivery. Because it is a predominantly ANC-ruled area, there was still rubbish bags all over the place. The people who work for the city, who do municipal services, clearing up garbage, just basically keeping streets clean, that were all striking because they weren't being paid. And, the mayor of Bloemfontein, and I'm sure this happens all across the country, we had recent issues in Northwest. That was also because of service delivery. So where AfriForum comes in, which is interesting, is that what they do is, and it's not just AfriForum, we've seen in various places across the country, we've seen just ordinary people consolidating, getting together and using their resources to basically do what the government should be doing, especially where tax money is concerned. Tax money goes to those services and those services aren't being done. There is obviously a deep corruption within the ruling party, within government. Just to maybe touch on that topic a bit, what has been your experience of that corrupt element within the government? And do you perhaps have any examples or have any ways on which we can solve this?
The corrupt element in the government. Now, luckily, I live in the Western Cape, and that's still mostly DA controlled. So the worst of the service delivery problem is not in the Western Cape. But what is happening at the moment, we are paying about 2 billion in taxes. We're only getting 50 billion back. So we can do a lot more. But the problem is the leftover 150 billion gets invested into other provinces, especially the Eastern Cape. Now, that is where the corruption happens. To stray that out, I have no idea. Like, we are the minority, and the zombies will always vote for the ANC just because it is the ANC. And that is where the root of this problem lies. That excess 150 billion should have been invested to build infrastructure in the Eastern Cape to stop the people from flocking over there to Cape Town.
Let's take a bit of a swing and, give us your perspective on feel within the colored community. What is their kind of, firstly, what is their feeling about problem? Because generally in South Africa, it is always portrayed as a black and white thing. And do you feel that the colored community in a way feels excluded from this? Well, not that that's a bad thing in a sense. And how do they see their role in this, as we would say, battle, as you would say, war? And in a way, no, I'm not saying in a way of choosing sides, but yeah, what role do they play? And do you see, or have you seen any type of leadership arise, in an organic way within the colored community?
Well, obviously, I can't speak for colored because I'm not a colored, but I do enjoy their culture because their culture is so similar to mine, but they definitely feel excluded. I can quote interviews from years back. They used to call it the zebra debate because only the whites and the blacks get to speak. The colors don't get to speak. The problem with them is their national voice isn't very loud. Locally in the Western Cape, they still form a significant percentage. So if we can get those guys on board to help us fight the common cause, the thing is, I refer to them as those guys as well. There's a reason why they are colored, why they are not black, because it's not another nation. It's our cousins, our nephews, our nieces, our uncles, our aunts that's running around there in Cape Town with the dark skins. Our genes are we are closer to them than we are to the Bantu. And I feel that they also feel the same way. You asked if I saw any leadership. You are probably hinting Gatvol Capetonian.
It's one of them, yeah.
When I checked last, I think they had about 20,000 followers on Facebook. The problem is the guys from Gatvol Capetonian, they are very good at garnering support, but they are not bookwise. And I really feel if AfriForum and specifically the guys from Gatvol Capetonian can combine their powers, because Gatvol Capetonian has a way to convince people, listen here, we really have a problem. Is the Bantu that's coming here, and we need to push them out. If they can garner support in that way, and AfriForum can do all of their legal things with it, because there are certain ways that we will still be able to save the Western Cape. If we can get that combination going, I believe there is solutions for the Western Cape.
Yeah, you bring up the word legal, and that's one of the big issues. The question for me is always, obviously, with respect to the time that we have before there's a full-out violent war, is there enough time to find legal ways to create a separate country where you can have coloreds and whites and separate that from the Bantu, as a lot of people have said is the idea with the Western Cape. And when do you decide, that screw legal ways, we're going to stage tax revolt in the Cape to kind of force the government to give us an area of land?
That is the whole thing. If everything goes down the drain, the justice system will be useless. When there's fully fledged war, there is no justice system. But there still is an international justice system. And when it comes to secession, the thing is, you need the UN to acknowledge your country. We don't have to discuss with our government. We need the UN to acknowledge this. So even if there's no justice system here, hopefully the justice system in the UN will support us. But the problem is this whole left against right thing, and white people can't open their mouths, is a global phenomenon though. And I believe a lot of European countries still show pity to the people that's coming over the borders. For example, in France, with the truck driver and the bombings in the UK and the things that are burning up in Sweden. But I think they are slowly coming around as well. And maybe eventually they will heed to our call.
The interesting thing about that, though, is it's almost as if the rest of the Western world is becoming South Africa, to put it in no uncertain terms. The refugee crisis in the West at large has proven that the third world doesn't integrate well into the first. And we faced with this narrative that white people are the oppressors, we are the evil ones, and we just seek, we wake up in the morning and we start planning on how to take over the world and, bring a brother down, essentially, which is not true. I mean, that's not the case. But what happens is, you've got successful countries and people continuously flock to them. And we can look at this in a larger perspective, say first world countries and the refugee crisis, and how the third world flocks to them. The gates are being opened, fine. There's a larger debate or a larger issue involved there, but the third world is nonetheless flocking there because it's allowed. What happens here in South Africa, and you touched upon this earlier, we have a large movement of Africans coming down to South Africa. Even now, in 2018, it's a huge issue, which results in what is termed xenophobic attacks from black South Africans against Nigerians or against Somalis or whatever the case may be. What happens is there's obviously no love lost between close ethnic demographics, and yet there's still a large difference between them. But at the same time, yes, South Africa is probably still one of the more successful countries in Africa at the moment. Maybe not for long, but people still come down to South Africa for opportunities, and that lessens the opportunities of the South African citizens, whether it's white or black. Now, what happens is, and you mentioned this also with the Western Cape, you bring it down to a much lower level or a much smaller scale, and many people flock to the Western Cape purely because it is one of the more successful provinces in the country. And there are many reasons for that. Whatever you might think of the DA, at least, they run a province better than what the ANC can. And maybe to tie that in, how do you see this trend going for South Africa?
That is the whole thing with self-determination. After you achieve self-determination, you are going to have to defend your borders. And obviously, this would be lambasted in the media because we are going to look like a small little Israel at the bottom tip of Africa. And they honestly, in my opinion, there is no other way. It's either defend yourself or get out. I really can't see Western nations that they will instruct their armies to come help us. It's probably not going to happen. We need to stand our ground. We need to get this done. It's the people in Cape Town are getting more and more. They are burning infrastructure more frequently. Like the town is slowly turning into a shithole. It's I believe Cape Town was like the gem of Africa since yonks ago, and it's slowly just becoming another slum. And the only way we can protect that is if we don't bring in jobless people, because it's the jobless people that they are burning down infrastructure. Now, fair enough, they are looking for opportunities, but don't come here and look for opportunities and then start burning down your neighbor's house and your neighbor's car because you don't have electricity supply, because you find yourself a spot in the bush to stay for a while. It is that factor we want out here. The black community from the Eastern Cape has been part of Cape Town for like how many years already, and there were never any problems, but it's almost like they are being bussed in at the moment, and it is this new element that is really creating a problem. I believe actually multiculturalism can work. We have communities here, but they all of them have their different sections around the city. In Brackenfell, we have the white people. In Mitchells Plain, we have the colored. In Khayelitsha, we have the blacks. And everybody is sort of self-determinating already on their own. And we respect each other. But it's the people jumping over the borders, and it's the people coming in from other provinces that is making it difficult for all of us. And it's those people we want out.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with multiculturalism is you can always say it works depending on how large you paint the borders. And, the effect, and you're right, we see that Cape Town, that people still coalesce into their smaller minority groups, especially if given voluntary choice of where to stay. And that, again, is always one of our arguments against multiculturalism. I just want to take sort of a segue, where we talked about self-determination, and we've been talking about a lot of possible solutions for, cessation of the Cape and that, but it all is generally collective solutions that we've discussed. Is there any specific individual self-determinating solutions that you have tried yourself that you think is something that people should start, even tomorrow, and thinking about things like self-defense or solar panels or growing their own food, whether that is even useful, or should we aim more and work harder for a sort of a collective solution? What is your thoughts on that?
Okay, you said personal self-determination. So that is basically preparing for war, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, sure, great. So that it is generally saying that I'm going to put all my effort in trying to kind of separate myself from the government and obviously service delivery because I'm worried about the day that the taps won't dry. Or do I put all my effort in, as you say, people from Afriforum do, they put all their effort into kind of getting the Afrikaner together as a collective and hence standing up. Obviously, I agree that you should do both, but what is your stance on how do you kind of align your time at the moment, which obviously time is critical?
The thing is practically to self-determine by yourself, like looking after you, making sure you have guns, etc. We are not allowed to own guns anymore. If you apply for a license, it will be months and months before you will eventually get it. You can, in the cities, it will have to be a collective stance because it's so congested here. Like not every guy can have a Jojo tank, and there would be solar panels everywhere. In rural communities, I think it would be best for those communities to try and do their own thing, like get off the Eskom grid and farm their own food, etc., etc. But it is just not practical in the cities. We are going to have to take over the municipality because the municipalities need to get run.
But in terms of other smaller, more practical elements, what can one do to, especially on a smaller scale in your own backyard?
I was thinking the other day, like if this country really goes down the drain, we saw with Zimbabwe, if the government makes the call, the telephone networks get shut down. And for me personally, getting the message out there would be very important. And if I can maybe get a rig to have access to satellite internet. The downside is it is super expensive because it's usually used in extreme cases, for example, like a boat. So the monthly subscriptions are very expensive. But if they take down the normal cell phone networks and the landline networks, you will still be able to get a message out there. Because during the time that they overthrew Robert Mugabe, there was little to none information coming out of the country because they didn't want the world to see what was happening in there. Maybe in my case, that is something I can think of. The thing is, I can put up water tanks, etc., but it will only last for so long. In the metropolitan areas, we are going to have to look at a group solution. In general, we will only take action as soon as we are pushed to that breaking point, that straw that breaks the camel's back. And if I can make a prediction, the straw that's going to break the camel's back in this instance is when they expropriate the first commercial farm, because it doesn't seem like any of the farms on those lists are commercial agricultural farms. But if you take, for example, the Zuidlanders, I think most Afrikaners at the moment think they are part of the tinfoil community. And in my opinion, I think they are as well. But if things really go down the drain, if things get hectic, I am 99% sure that the people will be very appreciative that they were making plans for the last 10, 15 years and being the prophets of doom, saying, we need to have a strategy for this and this and this. And organizations like theirs should have some solutions for us at least.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of agree with what the Zuidlanders are doing as well. The issue is just if there is an all-out war. The problem is always that, as you say, we had to start being active a couple of years ago to be able to turn the situation around, and now being reactive is probably just means that you're going to extend your suffering a little bit longer. From another point, I mean, this is personal, you don't have to answer this if you don't want, but do you have an exit strategy at all? Do you have any specific country, any place where you can, a ticket that you have planned, or a friend or family member somewhere outside of the country that when something happens that you get on a plane and leave? Do you have any such plans?
I'm on this roller coaster and I'm seeing it out. So there is no options for me. I just do not have the savings to get out of the country. As simple as that. I do not have any relatives or anything outside of South Africa. The thing for me is it's not like the government is at the moment calling for utter genocide of the white people. Just the thing is, we are seeing around us them breaking down everything we have built, and we will probably still be welcome to stay here as long as we live in squalor alongside the rest. Comparing us fleeing to another country as a refugee, where a country is like literally war-torn, where there's army huts and there's missiles and planes flying over your head that's bombing you. It's difficult to compare the two. Like, how does the international community justify bringing us in when there's no military action currently being taken in South Africa? So in that regard, I can understand why the international community doesn't really want to take us or take a firm stance on taking us in.
Yeah, right. I agree in the fact that, I mean, not that I'm against for going overseas to America and garnering support, but I agree, and that also comes back to kind of the Afrikaner history, that we kind of have always stood up for ourselves and taken responsibility for ourselves. And if we want to create something or if we want to move, that is what we did. And yes, that's generally why we do this and why we don't call for international help. And the idea is to get the solution from within the community, from people like you and from all the others in South Africa that we have interviewed, because as you say, and rightfully so, most people do not have the option to go, and hence there is only one solution, and that is to try and get the people around you, try and mobilize the people around you, try and encourage them. I mean, just on a personal level, and I would like to kind of hear what you've experienced. It is that they say in Roman times is that you have to, the Colosseum, they use it if you put on a show and you give people bread, that they stay distracted enough not to focus on the real problem. And generally amongst, not only just friends, but colleagues, I do experience almost, I wouldn't say a sense of nihilism, but a sense of denial, as if, especially obviously the three of us, we generally see what's coming and we want to do something about it now because it's only going to get worse. But I feel it's so difficult to get that through to people and almost want to understand where does that denial come from, because I do feel people feel it and they understand it. But it is almost just that I'm just going to watch the rugby, I'm just going to watch the series and I'll forget about it because, in a sense, I have to work 10 hours a day and pay taxes anyway. So what happens. How is your approach to kind of turn around that type of denial within people that just don't want to admit that what is coming is coming?
You referred to the working class just now, and that's what most people really want. They want to go to work in the morning, come home in the evening, have dinner, chat with your husband, chat with your wife, whatever, go to bed and do the same the next day. The problem is once you get involved into politics, we have seen how the left can absolutely crash your whole career. So it is very difficult for people that are still actively employed to take a firm stance, because like if the company hears I did this or if the company hears I said that, I might lose my job. So I think that carries a lot of weight in why most of us aren't outspoken yet. I think a lot of us have seen the light though. Since 94, they have been slowly picking away, getting more economic control through legislation. But the problem is the ANC is in such a shamble at the moment. They need these radical policies to keep their votes. And unfortunately, now we are the sacrificial lamb.
That ties into one of your videos that really caught our attention, and that also seems to be a very nice way of approaching the land expropriation issue. And this ties into, the politicians' rhetoric is that, promises were made, but these promises don't get kept. And, the government just shifts blame for their own inadequacies to another group. One of your videos where this is concerned is the land expropriation or expropriation without compensation for dummies. Maybe you can just please tell us a bit more about that video.
That video came about, I told you about my, let's call it an epiphany earlier, when they debated the land expropriation in Parliament. But originally I did it in Afrikaans, because after I saw that parliamentary session, what they said about us, that Boer blood inside me got boiling again. And listen here, we need to stop this. So I did it in Afrikaans. Since I've been getting a lot more involved, and I've been speaking to a few international guys as well, and they had so many questions. One of the big ones was, what made you open your eyes? So I decided to redo that video, maybe cut out the information that is not applicable for the international community and redo it in English. I basically made that video for other people to give them that wake up calls and listen, shit has gotten real. This isn't a game anymore. It's really happening.
That aspect is also very important. When the land expropriation issue was announced and when it started getting a lot of media attention, there was this talk of Cyril Ramaphosa speaking of, it's time for us to take the land back for our people, or give the land back to our people. That is a very interesting point to make, is, who is these people? If this was the rainbow country, if this was the rainbow land, and everyone here lives in equality and everyone is happy and wonderful, shouldn't then the idea then be, oh, but everyone is your people, Mr. Ramaphosa? So what happens is then identity politics comes into play, and then you realize, but, these guys aren't speaking for you. The ANC, and that is not speaking for the Afrikaner, it's not speaking for the Boer, it's not speaking for white South Africans, purely because there is an identity element at play. And many people don't realize this. And that, for us also, that was a huge alarm bell that went off, and that said, okay, but, this is going to start getting intense. Perhaps also to just get your quick thoughts on this. Just a little while ago, I'm sure you must have come across the news. There was talk from the Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini that, he came out and when land expropriation started becoming very, very heated a few months ago, it wasn't very clear as to what the entire issue was. Okay, we've got a better idea now in August, but a few months ago there was a lot of confusion, and King Goodwill Zwelithini came out and he basically said, but we vowed to fight for land, and as long as the king is alive, we're going to fight for our land. But speaking of the land held by the trust that king's jurisdiction falls under, and the hypocrisy surrounding that situation was Ramaphosa, he made an effort to go out to King Zwelithini and to say, but no, it's okay, your land is fine. Your land is not targeted. We'd like to actually hear your thoughts on this obvious double standard, because from our point of view is that, okay, but, if he goes to the Zulu King and says, but, your land is safe, shouldn't he be flying out to all the other people in the country and saying, but listen, your land is safe. It's not serious. It's all okay, dude. It's fine, bro. It's fine. But we don't get that assurance. And we've seen that develop even more so in the past while. What are your thoughts on that obvious double standard? And have you seen any other examples?
The issue here is that when they started this whole expropriation debate, the villains were always white people. The villains were never the black people. So he didn't play open cards from the beginning. And the Ingonyama Trust probably was never on the cards to be expropriated. It might have been as well, because I'm going to quote Ernst Roots now. He talks about a balance of power, which is a system that the ANC utilized to see what policies might go through and which won't. So they will basically throw a stone in the bush and say, we are expropriating all land. So Zwelithini stood up and said, no, I'm going to fight for my land. There will be bloodshed. So obviously the power is more on Zwelithini's side. So that's why I said, okay, no, you guys are fine. We're going to leave your land alone, which is why I feel that going outside for international attention to vouch for us will help the cause, because if the ANC sees the international outcry, and the ANC receives funding from a lot of countries, they see the international community is frowning upon this, it might change this. It probably won't change their stance, but it will change the way they implement this. If the international community, for example, is 100% behind this, which they aren't, which is clear, they probably would have taken our land already. But that is a way that the international community can help us here, just talking about it and saying, no, this is wrong.
Yeah, I hear you. I kind of, I am skeptic about the idea of the outside community helping us. In a sense, I'm trying to think of an example in history where the international community has interfered at a time that prevent such genocide from happening. As they've said many times before, the definition of genocide generally happens after. And again, I also have my skepticism about the UN, but I do hear what you say. And as we kind of have figured out that a collective system or collective approach is probably the best approach. Yeah, which outside countries are in a way the best target to try and or the best countries to approach?
Well, I think at the moment, America definitely. Australia has shown good faith. And I also think a lot of European countries are slowly waking up, because I'm seeing more and more things in the news of what's happening in Europe. And it's pretty bad. And to my international friends, and when I speak to them as well, like South Africa is more and more in the media as well. The problem we have here, like the only thing we can throw at the ANC at the moment is disinvest. The problem is now ties with the East has been becoming closer and closer. We just signed billions and billions of dollars in deals with the Chinese, which there's also the story about the deal signing that happened in China, and this whole land expropriation thing is linked, which is something to look into, but I cannot say definitely yes it is or definitely no it isn't. It will have some power, but the thing is the ANC has option number 2. They have the East, and they really don't care what they do to the white people in South Africa.
Yeah, that much is clear, that there's obviously a very anti-white sentiment, at least not, well, we used to think, at least it's not stated openly, but I mean, there have been various Twitter releases of, even from the government account on Twitter that said, we aren't very keen on white people, and white people live on stolen land, so I think their sentiment is definitely well known by now, the way they view us. Just to sort of wind down, any final thoughts on where we can take this? What options do we have left, if any?
I think we are at a stage now, if you are an Afrikaner and you are living in the Transvaal, especially like the Eastern Transvaal, which if you rewind history like 400 years back, that used to be the Bantu's land. Get your ass out of there if you have the option. If you can find a job here in the Western Cape, we need to start condensing our numbers, because we are a very small population spread over a huge land area. Problem is, if we do that, then we basically give up the farms there. So I don't think we are at that stage yet, but it looks like that is going to be the next step. We must consolidate our powers to a single area.
I think, I want to add to that. I agree with you there, and as we've thought many times before, that not just from a good economic standpoint, but as a second or third backup plan, we should probably start buying a few hectares, places like Urania and other places in South Africa where people have followed the same model, which we will still get to and make a documentary on that. But I think that's a very good plan to go from, in a sense. Exactly what we do here is, if us who feel the same and have the same urgency, we can somehow band together and then as a collective fight back.
The problem with that is, though, they are changing the constitution now, so anybody buying property now is actually a little bit silly, because you don't know if you will still own the property within the next 2 years. But at least if you can get your person into either the Western Cape or the North. The thing is, the Bantu doesn't want, they don't really care about the Northern Cape. It's a desert. They kind of leave Urania like, just let them be, let them have the little ethno state in the country. But it's definitely hard times ahead, There's no easy way to get out of this. For example, if the parallel government system works and we go to the UN and say we're already self-governing, problem is the municipal services has to degrade to such a point that there's no police, there's no water, there's no nothing, and we have to do everything for ourselves before we will be able to reach that self-determination. So there is definitely hard times that await us. It doesn't matter which way we go and how we win this. It's going to be difficult.
I fully agree. I mean, most of that thinks that the police are generally quite useless already at the moment, and just to survive those hard times, to get to a point where you can go to the UN, last quite a few months or a year or so. I agree with that.
And to closing us off, do you have any words to say to the audience, in the sense that, do you have a message of hope, or do you have any advice, any last words that you might want to carry across to the listeners?
I think everybody needs to band together, and we need to stop giving them the power. If somebody calls you a racist, let that run off your back. If you want to say something you believe in, say it. Doesn't matter if they are going to label you a racist. You are going to be labeled a racist anyway. We as a nation need to start taking care of ourselves again. Like Donald Trump said, America first. In this case, Caucasians. Like start looking after yourself. You can't father them forever. You need to start hitting back.
Truer words have never been spoken. You speak a lot of truth there. Just to give the audience an idea of plans for the future, where you see your channel going. Do you have any projects coming up, things like that?
The thing is, in my private life, there's things happening that I have a lot of free time at the moment. I really started the channel just because I had the free time and I was like super bored. So, and I'm as the wind blows me. For example, I know when I still had the leftist views, it was easy to bring in that whole satire comedy thing. But now I turned right, and it's difficult to put satire into real issues where people get killed or people get disowned. But I'm looking at what the people enjoy. If they comment on my YouTube or on my Twitter or whatever, I read them and I take it to heart, and like I see what they want, and maybe try and do more of that.
That sounds good. We'll definitely be watching and checking out some more of your work in the future, and we'd definitely love to have you on again. I think we've touched on a few topics here today, and I think it's a matter of there are too many topics and not always enough time or attention. Just also to give the listeners an idea of where they can reach you, please give out a few of your social media links, the platforms you're on, and where they can find your content.
I'm most active on Twitter. That would be Klipkop12. I'm sort of active on Facebook. I'm trying to pick that up, and I'm pretty sure you guys won't mind me adding the Willem's Discord server in the description of this video.
By all means, please go for it. We'll definitely be delving into more topics in the future. And the other thing also to mention is that the land expropriation issue is a huge one. We try and bring as much attention as possible, and the more voices heard, the better. And yours is a good voice out there, Klipkop, and we appreciate what you do, and we look forward to seeing more of it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for being on.
Ciao.
Cheers.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to another Boer Republic podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And if this message resonates with you, please spread it as far as you can. Your support is appreciated. Any feedback is encouraged, and we look forward to engaging with you on our various social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter, Gab.ai, Minds.com, Steemit, YouTube, DTube, BitChute, and PewTube, as well as on WrongThink.net. We update as regularly as we can, so please follow us and reach out to us. Until next time, stay safe wherever you may find yourself.